Don't miss the 46th Annual Southeast Field Days, celebrating the diversity of the Limestone Coast. 3 large pavilions featuring a huge range of the latest in agricultural equipment. Plus our guests, Airtime FMX, Quince Queen, Kathy Hughes and country music sensation Leah Briggs. As well, 2026 Coprice Australian Yard Dog Championships, plenty of demonstrations, trade stands and more. Over 500 sites with something for everyone. March 20 and 21 at Yakka Park, Lucindale.
So Wild Mountain straddles a ridge that runs up to the McPherson Range, which runs east-west, and that's the New South Wales-Queensland border. We want to move people. We want them to be engaged with the natural world and to realise that there is a place where you can come, where you can get back in touch with nature, be with like-minded people who are interesting and varied from young and old.
It's really amazing to be here on the ground with incredible organisations like Wild Mountains. They're really the backbones of communities. So we're really proud to be able to support organisations like this to withstand disaster risk that they might face and continue to do the good work that they do into the future.
In 2019, the fires came to within about 12 kilometres, and if we need to evacuate, we have the potential for leaving and turning on a sprinkler system that allows the water to keep going for at least 8 hours to keep the buildings damp and stop ember attack, which I think is wonderful. And I think that RSEQ helping support the community in that, I think is great.
Buy Australian made, and you're backing local jobs, a stronger economy, and the way we live right here. Australian made, made right here.
Welcome to the Country Telegraph. Nice to have your company. It's a Tuesday midday in Victoria, New South Wales at the moment until your daylight saving disappears. It's 1 o'clock, just after 1 o'clock, and nice to have your company. Before we get into our guest for the hour, just looking at some of the headlines from around Australia. Queensland's cattle tick management system is under internal review. The state government moves to restore confidence following the recent outbreak in the Taroom district. Tas farmers have warned that just as farmers grapple with a fuel supply crisis, alarm is now growing over surging farm fertiliser prices that could push food costs higher and deepen economic pressure. Tas farmers President Ian Sauer said the impact would be felt across the core fertilisers farmers rely on to grow crops. The federal government's move to release millions of litres of additional fuel from Australian stockpiles has been welcomed by the country's peak farming body for critical agricultural operations. Also, a small town service station owner says his business is in the midst of the worst fuel shortages in more than 25 years. Nathan Felvo was forced to ration the latest fuel delivery at his petrol station in Robinvale in Victoria's far northwest after running completely dry over the weekend. And finally, mutton prices have soared to near record highs as a sheep shortage forces processors to compete for dwindling livestock numbers. Okay, that's our news headlines for the hour. We're going to get into our first guest, go straight into our first guest. Vikki Campion is retired Queensland Fire and Rescue Service Fire Commander and Fire Investigator, a former Department of Social Security fraud investigator and independent researcher, a climate sceptic and energy realist, a libertarian and a fierce proponent of the traditional Australian values. Peter has been a prolific contributor to newspaper opinion columns for many years, with well over 1,000 letters published. His concerns about national developments prompted him to stand as a candidate at the 2020 election in Queensland and the 2022 federal election. Peter has been married for 38 years. His wife said feels like something like 380, but that's just between you and me. And has 5 children, the eldest being well-known journo Vikki Campion. That's the wife of Barnaby Joyce, an ex-TNT announcer. And he also has 4 grandchildren and is a long-term resident of Far North Queensland. Peter Campion, thank you for joining me. We're not there, Peter. Let's try that one out. Peter, how are you?
Mike. I'm very well, Mike. I'm going to have to update that bio. I've been married nearly 42 years now, and we have 8 grandchildren now.
8?
Dear. 8, yes.
Oh my goodness gracious. I'm just trying to get this thing to work here at the moment, and there we are. Let's try this one out. No, it's not working, you know. What we might do is just go to a quick commercial break, just so I can fix this thing up. This is the Country Telegraph. Nice to have your company, by the way.
In farming, there's different challenges, but what I see makes a really good farmer is being able to line those challenges up and work on the really big ones. Through the help we got, the irrigation project was the big one, the one we wanted to invest in to make our life a lot easier and give us a more resilient farm into the future. My name's Paul Roderick and we're at Tolga Park, our dairy at Harrisville in southeast Queensland, where we milk 400 cows and provide 3 million litres of milk. I really enjoy the legacy that we have. I'm 5th generation, so we've been here for over 150 years, and I've got 2 boys that might want to farm one day, and being able to continue to do that in the future, I guess, is one of the things that drives me as much as anything. I think our biggest challenge that we face here on farm is definitely the weather. Usually when it's dry, it coincides with higher cost of feed because it's harder to get. You try to grow more of your own, but if you've got to go to the market and buy it, you'll end up paying more. So every bit that we can grow, we don't have to buy, and there's a huge margin in that. We heard about the Farm Business Resilience Program from our local DPI Extension Officer, and it was something that we'd been very interested in because we were looking at some projects. We'd done a business plan previously, and so we had an idea where the business was going and what some of the priorities were. So we
And we're back again. See, it just works like magic. Peter Campion is my guest. Peter, you're way up north. Tell me, how's the lack of fuel and also the rising cost of fertiliser hitting your area, and what should be done?
Well, what we do know is that we still have fuel. We're not sure how long we'll have fuel. When I was in town earlier today, they were selling diesel for $2.80 a litre, so it's actually not quite as bad as some of our fellows down south round around Vikki and Barnaby's area, for example. What we do also know is that a lot of fertiliser is made from gas, from liquid petroleum gas, and if we don't start to use some of our abundant domestic supply of gas for our own purposes, we're going to start running out of food. Now, you mentioned that I'm here in Tolga in Far North Queensland. We have very long supply chains. At the moment, a lot of our access is underwater. We get quite a lot of rain here in the north. It's not unusual for us to be cut off by floods. And it's not unusual for us to be unable to get into our paddocks. However, the farm life must tick along. We must, particularly with the amount of wet we're getting, we have a lot of parasites and insects attacking. I'm a small orchardist in retirement, and we've got a lot of pinks disease, a lot of sapsuckers, and it's handy to be able to get in there on the occasions it does dry out enough to support a bit of weight and deal with some of those pests with sprayers and so on. But all of that requires the inputs that come from the southern part of the state, and that requires being delivered by truck. So the more the people that are in our federal government in particular interfere with our ability to get the necessities to grow food, the closer we get to the inner city Greens voters going to the supermarket and finding that supermarkets don't magically 3D print their apples and their carrots and their kale. They're going to get hungry, and they're going to get hungry before us because we actually can go into the back paddock and harvest a little bit for ourselves. And I'm particularly talking about food on the hoof there, which is well, really that's proper food. Vegetables are really just what food eats, aren't they? And yeah, so I think, as I said at Vikki and Barnaby's wedding, the father of the bride gets first speech. And as I said to the assembled luminaries there in that Walbrook Hall on that occasion, where a war is being waged against the ordinary people of Australia, and the weapon that they're using against us is they're cutting off our hydrocarbon fuels and our electricity supply, our reliable electricity supply, for no good reason. Because the whole premise of their anti-CO2 argument is essentially completely flawed. Without farmers and without transport, they're going to starve in the cities, and they're going to do it tougher there when systems do collapse than we're going to way out here in the bush.
We know that Barnaby is now One Nation, and with the Nationals, but even the Nationals, when they were in government with the Liberals, there was a bit of a ignorance towards the bush, which I found quite astounding, considering that the Nationals are from the bush or regional centres. The Labor Party themselves, I'm not picking on the Labor government, others have said the same thing, that they're a bit oblivious to what's happening in the bush. So they're sort of continuing the tradition of ignorance to what goes on in the bush, but they will certainly understand that if they don't pay a little more or have a little more consideration for those on the land in a very short space of time and a time to continue, because if you don't get your fertiliser in at the right time or you don't deliver at the right time, then the city folk won't be getting any, or they'll be getting less produce at greatly increased prices. So how do we make, and Barnaby's your son-in-law, how do we make this government, not whether it's Conservative or Labor, how do we make them understand that they need to have more consideration and more awareness of what goes on in the bush, because it will affect them down the line?
At this point, Mike, I think they know completely well, particularly if you look at the ages of a lot of these people, they know completely well where food comes from. They're not the brainwashed younger generation that genuinely thinks it comes from supermarkets. They know it comes from farms, and they know what inputs have to go into farms, and they know the criticality of timing, not just of fertilisation and pest control, but of planting and harvesting. They know how tough it is. This to me, and just another bio update, I ran as a 2024 candidate in the Queensland state election for One Nation. And I like to think that I encouraged my son-in-law to move in that direction, away from the Nats. The Nats and the Libs, to my mind, have been completely infiltrated by the Gramscian left. So that's Antonio Gramsci's plan of the long march through the institutions, infiltrating and subverting once respected institutions like the National Party, hollowing them out, gutting them basically, and wearing their skin as a skin suit and demanding respect that they didn't earn. So I think if you ask Vikki, she might tell you that there's probably as many lefties, if not more, in the Nationals now than there are in the Libs. And I think the Libs are sneaking up on Labor, and I think Labor have already overtaken the Greens on the left. So I think that infiltration and subversion has been going on for a very long time. I think actually what they're doing is the planned collapse of Western civilization. They know completely well that there is no substitute for hydrocarbon fuels. The whole myth of calling them fossil fuels, that's That's come from one particular family that's well known to everybody. I know you don't get into that too much on this channel. That's common knowledge now. People are aware that there's certain powers that be in this world that absolutely do not want Western civilization to continue on its current trajectory. And that's why, at a time where we're being flooded with additional people, additional mouths to feed, that there's these ongoing attacks on the very people that produce the food that these additional mouths need to consume. In fact, let's think about water for a minute. How long has it been since a major domestic water supply was built in Australia, as they bring in, 1 million people every couple of years? There's no logic to that. These people aren't devoid of logic. They're not devoid of rationality. They're doing it deliberately.
David Littleproud, you are right. He was very, very woke. Matt Canavan, I think, is going to be an excellent leader, and I would think future Prime Minister, providing he doesn't, sort of have the pressure, the old thumb screws in the back of his neck to make him follow the lead of what the party wants. As I said, you're in Tolga. You're in the Atherton tableland.
Yeah.
But if you head inland, you're going to some pretty sparse country. Do you have much contact with those on the flat part of Queensland compared to, and where you are at? It's beautiful. You're Atherton itself. But as I said, if you move out in an hour or two into the centre of Australia, it gets pretty flat and hot. Do you have any idea what the locals are thinking about the effort by government, one, to consider what they do, and secondly, this current government in Canberra on how they're mismanaging the whole fuel and fertiliser crisis?
Well, it doesn't matter whether you're in the hilly, damp part or the flat, damp part at the moment. It's not real dry out there at the present moment.
No, it's not. So I take that back.
We fairly universally regard our government as treating us with absolute contempt. They're not governing for us. They're not governing for the grazier or for the broadacre farmer. They're not governing for the orchardist around this part of the world or the cane farmer. I don't think they're even governing for Australians. They seem to be governing for foreigners. And this is something I've written about extensively. I've pretty much been banned from letters columns. Again, I was banned during COVID and allowed back on for a little while from about 2022 to talk about climate change again. The climate's still, like this last couple of years, have been just like it was in the 1970s in Cairns. But anyway, I won't go there. There's no such thing as cycles, right? I think they're governing for a supranational body that, again, just wants to bring down what's been built. They don't like the trajectory of Western society. They don't like freedom, particularly not freedom of speech. They don't want people to be criticising them in particular or criticising the people that they might be working for. And I'm not even suggesting those people are a common religion or a well-known religion. That they seem to be a fairly secretive group with a fairly secretive religion, and their gods seem to date back to well before Abrahamic religions. And the Epstein files points to a fair bit of what's going on there. Well, that seems to be the group that our government's reporting to, and it doesn't really matter whether you're a National or a Liberal or a Labor or Green. I regard them as the uni party these days with a capital UN, because they seem to be more interested in what the UN wants them to do, and we know which group runs the UN, and it's not a group that anyone votes for. It's a group that seems to be anti-humanist to its very core, and consequently that manifests as things like fuel that's creeping up on $3 a litre when food growth in this country, food growth and food transport is entirely dependent on it, and we have a superabundance of it under our feet right here. We've got more oil in the ground under Cooper Pedy in tight shale than the Saudis ever have, and the technology now exists to get that out relatively cost effectively. And that's before we go offshore off WA or drill under the Rumble Ranges near Rockhampton. We should be the richest country on earth, and I've been saying this for 20 years. We should have almost no income tax. We should be paying for our entire government, our welfare system, and everything else from the income that we produce from the mineral wealth that we have in such abundance. And yet, what does our government do? The government that we elect somehow? Yeah, well, it serves foreign interests that say, no, you can't do anything of that. And what you do dig up, we've practically got to give it away to our major companies, which we have controlling interests in. It's one big club, Mike, and we ain't in it, as the late, great George Carlin said.
Yeah, he was very good too. Tell me about Tolga before we run out of time. Describe the town to us. I mean, you are in one of God's country's greatest assets, and that's the Atherton tableland. I keep being told by Jen, next time I go to Cairns, I've got to go up to the Atherton tableland, and which we will. But tell us about Tolga. And I mean, I think the main industry there is peanuts, which could have been, could be Canberra, because they're full of peanuts too. But your industry, you've got the edible peanuts, and you've got the beautiful Atherton tableland. What is the appeal of Tolga?
Well, for me, when I was raising my children, well, actually, when Vikki was born, I was a fraud investigator for the Dole office. Cairns had been about 27,000 people when my wife and I were growing up there, but it grew to, I think it was about 75,000 people, and houses were pushing $75,000 each to buy, and I think we got to about a fifth or sixth set of traffic lights, and the crowd was just too much. I wanted to move to a town that was more like the one that I grew up in, and I figured that Tolga, which at that time had 1,100 people, would take longer to grow, and I'd be able to raise my children in a fairly safe, friendly, heterogeneous village environment, and that indeed was the case. So we stayed put in one house for 30 years. It grew to 8 bedrooms. I switched to the fire brigade. The industry around us was peanuts, and these days peanuts, they're still present, but not so much. We used to grow a lot of maize. There's still some maize. There's still a few seed crops around, but sugarcane is creeping in. There's more and more grazing. We've had just such a long string of wet seasons now, exactly like the 1970s, that it's making it harder for a lot of the crop farmers. But blueberries are taking off. Apparently we can't get locals to work on those. We've got to import Pacific Islanders to work on the blueberries, which seems strange when we've got so many unemployed people. But anyway, that's another set of government policies that we don't have time to unpack. But where I am on my little place, it's either grazing or small orchards or just hobby farms. Mums and dads with chickens and a couple of house cows. And it is, as you say, one of the most beautiful places. But we're also becoming a bit of a dormitory suburb for Cairns now, and also a bit of a retirement home. So you've got a lot of people that are fleeing the tyranny that they saw in Melbourne, for example, and they're selling the 3-bedroom fibro shack for $2 million and moving up here and buying a very nice place on 20 acres. And I think that pretty soon the average age up here is going to be about 70. Certainly is at the clubs. I'm a shooter, so the shooting clubs I attend, I think the average age these days is about 70. And I think the future for the farm industry is bright, but it does depend on hydrocarbon fuels, which never were fossils. Were fossils.
I mean, the only fossil stuff is you and I.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Just one thing. Somebody wrote in, they said, does this guy sit on the front of his porch in a rocking chair with a straw hat and a shotgun on his lap?
Yeah, I do. With a twig of grass as well. I'm missing a tooth at the moment. I don't always look like a complete yokel.
No, it looks great. It looks great. You want some tobacco?
Yeah. It's my inner bogan coming out.
Hey?
It's my inner bogan coming out.
Yeah, good on you. You're true blue Australian, and you are, and you've got the flag behind you. Very proud of that. Peter, if somebody wants to get hold of you, have a natter about life, or find out where to stay or where to eat in Tolga or the Atherton tableland. By the way, how far is Tolga out of Cairns?
Well, it's as the crow flies, about 45 kilometres, but to go there by road, it's about 90, because you've got to climb over the major part of the Eastern Range to get there. And that used to take about 61 minutes from my house in Tolga, my old house in Tolga, through to the Cairns Fire Station. Now you're looking at 90. You know, they've really dumbed those roads down, lowered speed limits, removed overtaking lanes. They're taking, over 2 years now to patch up some potholes on the Caranda Range. It's just
don't worry about that.
absurd. You know, they built it in less time than that with a small bulldozer by today's standards, driven by a teenager who'd never driven one before. No, we've got the most incompetent bureaucrats and governments.
You just relax, breathe in.
Sorry.
And by the way, you're only whinging about the time. It really is because your Massey Ferguson that you drive into town is getting you a bit old. That's all. So stop whinging. Peter Campion.
Man.
Now, how does someone get hold of you, Peter? Besides, I mean, not to roll around to your house with you sitting on the veranda with a shot 12 gauge and a hat and a rocking chair, bottle of whiskey. What about if they want to just get online and have a chat to you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way at the moment is through X, formerly the app formerly known as Twitter. It's at Good As Done, or Peter Campion. I think if you search Peter Campion, my ugly mug might come up. But if it doesn't, at Good As Done, because I think as a nation we're good as done. It's going to be very hard to pull this jet airliner out of the nosedive that we're in. At 700 kilometres an hour and rapidly approaching the paddock at the foot of the hill there. It's going to take some effort of strength. And you touched on Matt Canavan before. I love Matt. He's a great guy. I've spoke to him in person a number of times. But he's not the answer to our solution. We've got to leave the uni party behind. We really do have to go in a whole different direction. One Nation's battle flag has got more flak holes from spending more time over the target than any other battle flag on the political battlefield at the moment. It's the only leader that's still standing that's been jailed for her points of view, being Pauline. And frankly, I'd much rather Barnaby as a One Nation Prime Minister than I would Matt as a Nationals Prime Minister. And that's not just because he's married to my daughter, but because the uni party is not the answer to the solution. The uni party is the problem. Now we've got to try something different.
You need to listen to your doctor. Just relax.
My blood pressure's under control. I gave up drinking. There's no bottle of whiskey. It's all spring water these days.
Right. Well, that's why you have high blood pressure, because you need a drink. Peter Campion, I think that's just brilliant. We'll do more of these and we'll get some footage up of Tolga and the Atherton Tableland and talk good things and also things that would make us even better. And next time, hopefully you'll have all your teeth. Peter Campion from Tolga, thank you so much for your time. This is...
Always a pleasure, Mike. Always a pleasure.
It's my great pleasure to announce that registrations are now open for the 2026 Mackay North Queensland Games.
The largest sporting festival in regional Australia, and that's what we're about to have in Mackay. It has the ability to bring people together of all backgrounds, all ages, and all abilities. So there's no other tool in our toolbox that can actually do that for a regional community.
It gives everybody an opportunity to be on a stage, to fight, to be determined, to compete in a way which means they can stay local.
I'm Liam Paro, the former IBF Super Lightweight World Champion, and I'm super excited to announce that I'm an ambassador for the 2026 NQ Games. Being a proud North Queenslander myself, and coming through the North Queensland Games, I can't wait to see the next superstars come through the ranks.
I'm very excited for the North Queensland Games coming up.
I'm very excited for the North Queensland Games.
It's an opportunity to show everything that I've learnt throughout my journey.
I'm really excited for it to be coming to Mackay. I think it's a great opportunity.
I think it'll be a good influx of people to come and see what Mackay has to offer.
I'd like to officially declare registrations open for the 42nd North Queensland Games for the largest multi-sport festival in regional Australia. We'll see you in May. Thank you very much.
North Queensland Games, register now!
Regional Banking Investment Alliance includes a group of 21 regional banks fighting for their local communities to ensure that face-to-face banking continues sustainably into the future. Now, David Hine, who was on yesterday and he had some connectivity issues, so we have hooked up again, is CEO of Regional Australia Bank and a member of RBI Alliance. We're going to talk to David about the regional banking network and the challenges they face and difficulties for regional communities as bank branches continue to close. And what of the future of banking services to regional communities? Can the tide be turned back? First of all, David, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me on again.
Yep. Now, I've just we're sort of redoing this because, and we'll ask you some new questions too, I promise. But the background, somebody has written in and said, "What's the background?" Well, that's a magnificent part of the world called Bangalore. And if you've never been to Bangalore or to Byron Bay, but it's just into the hinterland of outside of Byron Bay, and it's a magnificent part of the world. But it's these parts, David, that do require local banking. And what we're seeing, what we're talking about is that the big ones, the big four, really aren't doing enough now to look after the farmers or the locals in small outback towns or rural towns. Just recap, how can we fix it?
Well, Mike, you're right to identify the problem. As we mentioned quickly last time we spoke, since 2017, 40% of regional Australia's bank branches have been removed. Now that's about $1 billion worth of investment into regional Australia per year that doesn't exist anymore, and about $500 million worth of salaries, and that doesn't even begin to touch the lack of services, the lack of the ability to service our small businesses, our farmers, etc. With their cash transactional needs and support through an increasingly complex world. So this situation we're facing today, Mike, is just not sustainable. Banking is complicated these days, and our needs of our communities are important. And our regions shouldn't be treated, Mike, as second-class citizens, and that's unfortunately, how I feel the banking industry leaves us today, and something needs to be done.
Yeah, and the conversation with the guy before you, Vikki Campion, again was saying, how do we make the politicians or Canberra or the cap cities in each of the states, how do we get them to understand and appreciate what the person on the land or in the rural community, you don't have to be on the land, you could have a business there or whatever, or could just retire there, but they seem to be left out. How do we make Canberra or the other state governments appreciate the rural and outback communities more?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike, and you can't help but think that too many of our politicians don't live or have experience of life in regional Australia. They don't understand that, like yesterday, we have technology outages, telecommunications challenges which impact our ability to do things like use an app to do our banking, etc. We don't understand, too many of our politicians don't understand the importance of cash within our local communities and the need for that sort of infrastructure to be supported. It's an outstanding challenge, I think, and more power to you and your channel for trying to elevate some of these discussions to the people in Canberra so that they do get a proper appreciation that, it's not good enough to just simply say to our regional towns and communities that they should just do their banking on the mobile phone. It's not good enough to leave them just to Aussie Post. While Aussie Post is a good outlet for some small ticket cash transactions. It's just a commitment to regional Australia to say that we're not going to treat you as if you were someone in Pitt Street in Sydney or someone like that. Being second-class citizens just doesn't cut it. We need a real piece of public policy, Mike, that has a chance of reverting back to proper investment in branch services back into regional Australia. I think, Mike, I'd go so far as to say that that the politicians in Canberra don't understand that there is a cross-subsidy that exists today within banking, where banks, like ours, like the members of our alliance, recognise our social contract to support face-to-face branch services. We put that down in terms of employing people and paying rent and being valuable members of our local communities, and yet other banks like Macquarie, etc., think that they can get away without making that sort of investment and continue to earn money out of regional Australians without honouring their social contract, and that's the cross subsidy that needs fixing.
What about the reasons that so many of the smaller banks are being swallowed by the big four?
Well, I mean, this doesn't help. Many of our smaller banks understand the importance of local community contact and relationship, and as a consequence, we do see the importance of investing in face-to-face branch services. But it's really hard to sustain that, Mike, if even when you believe in it as truly as my peers in the RB Alliance group do. It's really hard to sustain that when too many of our customers end up taking their money, quite rightly so, to many of the other banks because they can afford to show sharper prices because they don't have the cost of supporting local jobs and branch services in the community. We all do our best in honouring our social contract, but those of us who don't, those banks that don't, unfortunately, are put in a position where they can be the winners. And it's just not sustainable, Mike. We need proper public policy which changes the landscape, reverts back to a proper marketplace where banks like ours can compete properly with the likes of Macquarie Bank and ING and all of those others that don't step up and make that investment into our towns and communities.
What about the competing with the big four? I mean, they've got not a great history, but they do have history. They have the wealth and the resources to do what they like. Is it a bit like, say, fighting Goliath, being the small bank or entity amongst all these, the four big ones?
Yeah.
What are the challenges?
Look, I mean, being small has an immense number of advantages too, Micah, and we shouldn't skirt past those. And I think a big part of that is that because we are local, because we are part of our communities, we understand the context, the conditions, the challenges that many of our customers face. And I think if you're a large bank where you effectively make all your decisions out of the middle of Sydney or the middle of Melbourne, or even worse, offshore, you can't have that sort of level of connectivity. You can't make decisions consistently that are in the best interests of your customers. Whereas that's, I think, the advantage of many of we smaller banks is that we know our people, we know our customers, and our staff know them too, and we can make good decisions as a consequence. But where it really gets unfair is where our recognition of our social licence, our contract, the gift that we the obligation that we have as a consequence of being a regulated bank is unfairly taken advantage of by the larger end of town, where they can continue to lend into our communities to make money out of regional Australians, but not put the money back where they earned it. Where they effectively export P&L out of our regions back into the big cities and even worse offshore.
What about the RBI Alliance and its aims? Tell us about these.
Well, as I mentioned before, Mike, we recognise that there's a cross-subsidy that exists between those of us who recognise our social obligation to present branch services face-to-face, trained human beings who can engage with our customers and understand their challenges and help solve for them. That cross-subsidy works in favour of the banks that don't recognise that obligation. And our objective is to try and find a piece of public policy which reverses that, which makes sure that we're all on a level playing field, so that banks like ours, members of the Alliance, can compete and support our towns and communities in a vibrant way, so that we can create jobs, give careers to the next generation of young regional Australians who live in our towns, but serve our small businesses and our farmers in the way that they need, with understanding of context, without sort of pushing them away to cheap channels like mobile apps and call centres that might be manned from offshore.
Just looking here, it's some messages sent through. Someone mentioned that with the big four closing their branches, it does open up opportunities for people like yourself. If you see say ANZ decide to shut the door in town X, what's the process? Because one, you'd say, well, there's an opportunity for us. The reason why the ANZ, as an example, and it's all fictitious, has moved out, you would think because it's not profitable or not enough profit in it for them. So what's a process? So when you look at a market, there's no more big four there. They've all moved out. They've done it for a reason. So, we can't ignore that at all. But how do you go about the process of determining if it's a place that you want to be?
Well, Mike, first thing to understand is that, and they're on record in saying this, I think they've been quoted in things like the Royal Commission as saying that when a major bank withdraws a branch from one of our country towns, they retain well over 90% of the business despite closing the branch. And that's the disappointing thing when I still have a branch in that town, or I look to put a branch in that town. That business, unfortunately, the balance sheet business, the lending activity, the deposit-taking activity often stays with that major bank. And so what ends up happening is that a bank like Regional Australia Bank will invest in people, employ people in that town, that community, pay rent, pay all of the suppliers that come and support our branch activity, all of which commands no revenue. We don't charge for cash services. There's no fee attached to managing a small business's cash float. And so 30% of our transactions over our counter end up going to another bank's balance sheet, a major bank's balance sheet. So they get to keep all the profitable business. And unfortunately, the expense remains with us. And that's the challenge in the business case right now, Mike. That's the cross subsidy that is in place today. So you're right. Most people would say, in a town like where we are in Uralla, we're the last bank in town in Uralla or Wellington or any of those places where you might naturally assume that Regional Australia Bank's in a great position to clean up the business in that town. The reality is what we clean up is the expensive services, face-to-face services, and the profitable bit of banking stays with the major banks. And this is the bit that we need to undo, that level of cross-subsidy back to the major banks. They know that they can make more money by closing that branch, and there's no consequence. There needs to be a consequence. We need a piece of public policy that says, if you're going to close that branch in regional Australia, there has to be a consequence, and you need to help banks like ours that are prepared to invest in those towns make those business cases to properly invest back in regional Australia.
But it's very hard. If you're a business, it's very hard to change banks, isn't it? How can it be made easier?
Yeah, friction is an important part of that. And I want to be clear, Mike, too. I would never want a member of one of our towns or communities to choose us out of a sense of compulsion. We need to be competitive. We need to be a competitive force that is able to win the business quite rightly in a competitive environment against the major banks. The problem at the moment is that we feel like we've got one hand tied behind our back. If we are stumping up with our part of our social responsibility, then to be able to compete head on with some of these banks becomes harder, in fact even impossible in some of our towns. Look, I'd never want anyone to feel as though they have a sense of obligation to do their business, to borrow or to stick their deposits with one of our banks just out of a sense of obligation. But it becomes impossible to compete if we don't level the playing field. And that's where this piece of public policy that our group is advocating for becomes really important.
What about the Middle East? I mean, it's a long way from, say, Bangalore, for example, but it's not really, if you look at it, because we need stuff that needs to get through there, and it's been blocked at the moment. How's that impacting banking? And I see that the interest rates may go up because of inflation still not being curbed. However, it's not. I mean, using me as an example, it's not my fault that the inflation is going up. It's because, one, there's no oil or little oil and uncertainty. Two, the fertiliser, that's not going to get through. So therefore, that affects supply and just maintaining the land and whatever. Then you have just the ever increasing cost of goods and services, and no one is immune. So it really isn't in many ways, it's not the consumer's fault or the one that's got bought themselves a place to live in. It's not their fault that these things are happening. If they don't buy the food or buy those services, then they don't exist. How do we bring back a little more fairness to this? Because It's you can't just say, well, it's gone up to 5% or whatever. It's not our fault.
Yeah, Mike, and it's quite plain to me that that our regional towns and communities are the ones that cop the brunt of much of this sort of fracture overseas first and most powerfully. You know, I think we undervalue the fact that that our national economy is driven out of our towns and communities. It's not driven out of Sydney and Melbourne. It's driven out of the local economies, the hard work of our farmers, our farming communities, and our small businesses across regional Australia. And you know, every one of your listeners will know that that it was our towns. You know, look at my town where I live in Armidale. It's impossible to get diesel fuel these days in and around Armidale. It impacts our communities first and foremost, and the knock-on effects are significant. You know, if our farmers can't fuel their machinery, then what does that do with our crops and with our ability to service our the sheep herds, etc. All of that sort of stuff become problematic, which have then impacts on the local towns' economies, the impact on small businesses, their ability to pay salaries to kids and staff, etc. And the knock-on effect then in terms of the aggregate becomes significant to the national economy. So it's quite clear to me, Mike, that that our towns and our communities in regional Australia are very susceptible to these shocks overseas. I wait eagerly to see what the Reserve Bank does today with the cash rate. I know that most pundits are picking that we'll see a rate increase, if not this month, then probably next month or soon thereafter. You know, that'll be another shock, another hit to our local enterprises, and we need to work really hard to make sure that that our towns, our communities are served well with good, smart people, regulated banking staff able to help and support them, and most importantly, with banks that are competitively able to present capital to good ideas and good initiatives and good farms and good small businesses across regional Australia.
Because I think about the Bendigo Bank. You know, we're your local bank. Unfortunately, we're going to be 300 kilometres away, and you don't want that happening again, because all it does is it's like a kick in the gut in the rural community, and they go, "Wow, here we go again." So I suppose the pressure is on you, but a lot of people are moving away from cash, and not by choice. What's your views on for example, the digital currency they're trying to bring in? Because digital currency comes along with some caveats of great concern, you might say. What are your views on that? Do you think because if you start doing digital currency and digital everything paying online or whatever, that connection between you and the customer is just not there. How do we fix that? How do we sort of go back a little bit?
Look, I know there are a lot of academic arguments for the role of different types of digital currency, but I fall back to a pretty simple principle, and that is in regional Australia, you need to be able to know that you can make a payment now. And unfortunately, with technology outages and the like, the one form of payment mechanism that ticks all of those boxes is cash. So I'm a massive advocate for making sure that regional Australian towns continue to have access to cash. That we make sure that we don't allow, the current negotiations that are exclusively being held between the major banks and Armaguard don't price us out in terms of the capacity to deliver cash into our towns and communities. And we don't fall for this little white lie. Perhaps you might use stronger language than that. That we should all be using these cheap digital channels, which include digital currencies, etc. There is an important, and there will always be a role for cash in our communities, especially in regional Australia. It is the last payment mechanism that survives no matter what else happens, and we need to make sure that we preserve it. And that we don't create a structure by investing all of our time and effort in digital currencies and the like, as opposed to making sure that our cash infrastructure is available, works, and is cheap and efficient.
And with digital currency, you'd find also that there will be fewer retail banks, smaller branches or banks opening, because there is just no need for it. So I think and it's interesting. We could go into this and have a deep dive, which I'm not going to, but it doesn't augur well. I think, and in my own humble opinion, that we go down this path and discard cash. I think cash should always be king. That's my opinion. And I think as for a branch opening in a rural area, in a small town, I also think then that this is a great way of the connectivity between the community and the bank itself, or the branch itself. What else is in the works for Alliance?
Well, I mean, the relationship between the cash discussion and the branch discussion is important, and perhaps it's worthwhile a minute underlying that. We need to make sure that our towns are properly serviced in terms of cash distribution. And one argument that's been put out there is that we can solve for the absence of branches by just making sure we have enough ATMs out there, and that's enough. I call rubbish on that one. I think that that ATMs at the end of the day are an important. They have a role in the distribution of cash amongst our towns and communities, but they're good for small denomination, low complex transactions. We need to be able to support the complex, high volume transactions that many of our small businesses need to manage floats, etc. And that can only come over the counter, over branch services with trained staff on the other side. Those trained staff need to be able to engage with context and understanding, Mike, as you were saying, so that they can appreciate the challenges that particular customer might be facing, including being able to spot, unfortunately, an increasing rate of scams and frauds. ATMs can't do that, whereas good trained people over the other side of a counter can. So I think there's this connection between the cash discussion, which I completely agree with, is the final form of payment that we must ensure that all of our towns and communities have access to, and this argument that we would make as part of the Alliance that the branch services trained staff who understand the context and the challenges facing the customer on the other side of the counter can help manage them on the way through. But there's one line I like to use, Mike, because I think it's powerful. Many of us have been the subject of the threat of scam artists or fraud artists, etc. And look, I'm unafraid to admit I've lost money to a scam. I've been working in banking and payments for years, Mike, but even I've come foul with a scam artist, etc. Who's managed to remove a bit of my hard-earned money as well. So this is something that we're all susceptible to, and my view is that the best form of biometrics. We all say, the big banks will say that biometrics is the answer to a lot of this sort of stuff. They can build in some type of facial recognition, all of that sort of stuff. The best form of biometrics, Mike, is speaking to someone on the other side of a counter who knows you. You can never replace that. No technology can outbuild that.
Mm. And I was just thinking, as you were talking before, that regional and rural areas, especially rural areas, are actually on the increase because people are moving from the city. There's just nowhere to live. It's overtly expensive, and they venture into a smaller town, and they stay there. And that's actually good for the area, good for you too, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And the more people who see the natural beauty and the opportunity and the better pace of life and Mike, what I'd say is the connectivity to the word that I like to use, community. I think the more we'll see, people, see that the rat race that we call Sydney and Melbourne and other places like that isn't worth it anymore. Yeah, come to the countries, come and build your business and and get on the farm or enjoy the lifestyle that is out here in our towns and communities. There's nothing better. Our economies are built around the ingenuity, the resilience, and the character of our towns and communities. Come and be part of it. There's nothing better.
Totally agree. It's like a breath of fresh air, and in that you actually do have that breath of fresh air.
Mike, I got to say, look, I was born and raised in country New South Wales, and unfortunately, my career took me to Sydney and Melbourne, and it took me a while to realise that I'd missed a trick. But thank God, mate, that I did see the light, and my wife and I are back living in regional New South Wales and loving every bit of it. And it's.
I hope you're not like the Peter Campion that I picture him sitting on the porch with his potato whiskey, or potato peel whiskey, his rocking chair and his 12 gauge and his gumboots on. I mean, that's just a terrifying thought, but you can still sit out on the porch.
What a character, though, wasn't he? He's a character, and I think that's part of the beauty of our towns and communities, is we can have characters like Peter and we can engage with them and have good discussion and hear lots of different views and, agree or disagree and call each other names, etc. But at the end of the day, communities pull together when times are tough. That's what I love about regional Australia. We have that sense of I've got your back, and that's a big part of what our alliance is about too.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
The only thing is, though, hopefully he'll have his teeth, because I think the real reason, I wasn't going to mention this, the real reason he had one tooth missing is because he heard that if you put a tooth in the glass of water and make a wish, it might come true. He didn't understand, though, you're not supposed to rip it out at the same time. So anyway, he's learning. David, if somebody wants to find out more about what you do and the Regional Australia Bank, how do they do that?
Well, there's a website set up for the Alliance, rballiance.com.au, so you can have a look at that and get involved, read all the material. But there's, as you say, there's well over 20 of our banks, particularly our smaller banks, signed up to this initiative. Every one of them would be more than happy to speak with any one of your audience members and talk to them about what we think is our obligation as a bank to our towns and communities, and about how our proposal for a piece of public policy can help solve that permanently, as opposed to continue to see the slide into digital channels and a lack of understanding and support.
Absolutely brilliant. The invitation is open always. So whenever you feel the urge to come on and talk about Australia, talk about community, talk about banking, the opportunity is there for you. So please don't forget us. That's David Hine, CEO of Regional Australia Bank. This is the Country Telegraph. Don't miss the 46th Annual Southeast Field Days, celebrating the diversity of the Limestone Coast. 3 large pavilions featuring a huge range of the latest in agricultural equipment. Plus our guests, Airtime FMX, Quince Queen, Kathy Hughes and country music sensation Leah Briggs. As well, 2026 Coprice Australian Yard Dog Championships, plenty of demonstrations, trade stands and more. Over 500 sites with something for everyone. March 20 and 21 at Yakka Park, Lucindale.
So Wild Mountain straddles a ridge that runs up to the McPherson Range, which runs east-west, and that's the New South Wales-Queensland border. We want to move people. We want them to be engaged with the natural world and to realise that there is a place where you can come, where you can get back in touch with nature, be with like-minded people who are interesting and varied from young and old.
It's really amazing to be here on the ground with incredible organisations like Wild Mountains. They're really the backbones of communities. So we're really proud to be able to support organisations like this to withstand disaster risk that they might face and continue to do the good work that they do into the future.
In 2019, the fires came to within about 12 kilometres, and if we need to evacuate, we have the potential for leaving and turning on a sprinkler system that allows the water to keep going for at least 8 hours to keep the buildings damp and stop ember attack, which I think is wonderful. And I think that RSEQ helping support the community in that, I think is great.
And we're back again. Almost finished. I thought I'd just go through some of the headlines again, just to recap. Queensland's cattle tick management system is under internal review as the state government moves to restore confidence following the recent outbreak in the Taroom district. Now, Tas Farmers has warned that just as farmers grapple with a fuel supply crisis, alarm is now growing over surging farm fertiliser prices that could push food costs higher and deepen economic pressure. Tas Farmers President Ian Sauer said the impact would be felt across the core fertilisers farmers rely on to grow crops. The federal government's move to release millions of litres of additional fuel from Australian stockpiles has been welcomed by the country's peak farming body for critical agriculture concerns, which just makes a hell of a lot of common sense, doesn't it? Now, this is right up in, I think it's in Victoria, I should know that it is. It's in Robinvale. A small town service station owner says his business is in the midst of the worst fuel shortages in more than 25 years. Nathan Felvo was forced to ration the latest fuel delivery at his petrol station in Robinvale. Now, that's in Victoria's far northwest, after running completely dry over the weekend, which is a disgrace. And think of it's, I think, just finished picking, almost picking grapes there too. They need diesel. They need to make sure that they have all the accessibility to diesel and petrol too. Now, Robinvale's not just this little town; it's a big, long town, and then you got other areas close by which would also rely on fuel, Euston and places like that. And finally, mutton prices have soared to near record highs as sheep shortage forces processors to compete for dwindling livestock numbers. That's it. I'll play this short break, and then that's it for us for the Country Telegraph. We'll catch you again tomorrow, same time, same shed, and same pub. Hopefully you'll be with us, and also same telephone box. Have a good one.
I don't think I'd be where I would be or where I am now without having moved to Mount Isa.
I guess if you don't get out of your bubble from wherever you live in, you don't know what else is going on around the rest of the world.
The people, the opportunity, the places you can go see, the amount of adventuring you can do around here is just unlimited.
There's community groups for just about everything. We've got most sports covered. It's like-minded people, all encouraging.
Mount Isa is all about community. It's all about building those strong connections within each other.
We went out the other weekend, we got 15, 20 people to come out for a big four-wheel drive. Everyone loved it. The environment that everyone made was just good. Everyone there, everyone having a go.
You've got so much time after work finishes. The sun is up. I know people who put their speedboat in after work and go skiing.
You're able to spend a lot more time doing the things that you love when you're not having to commute so far to work every day.
You get on with everyone, everyone knows everyone, everyone's got mates everywhere. Everyone's willing to help you out too, so you won't get that in the city.
I think you just have to give it a go. You just have to take every opportunity you possibly can and make the most of it.
Yeah, I'm glad I've made the decision I did. Something about the town just brings you back.
Experience of what it is like to be out here and get away from the hustle and bustle and the amazing natural beauty we have to offer out here and the fantastic people. If you're lucky, you might stay for 20 odd years.